Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are here on a special episode, a bonus episode. You knew we had to do it. The calls started coming out days ago. All my friends who listen to the show, when are you going to record? When are you going to record? When are you going to talk about it? When are you going to talk about Vince McMahon stepping down?
Yeah, I think this was something that we kind of kept our eye on for a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I'm glad we didn't do it because new shit certainly came to light very soon after.
Yeah, and you know what? By the second we press stop on the record button, I'm sure it'll be outdated in some
Yes.
way. So we'll try and keep things as vague and open and
we are releasing this very
specific.
soon after too, so like we're trying to move to churn this quickly, like you said, so we can at least get in line with the news cycle.
If we had a YouTube page, we would have just pressed like the live button, but because we're still stuck in, I guess, 2016, where people Twitch wasn't quite a thing as big as thing as it is now. I don't know.
No, we're
see.
a calculated, planned out podcast. We're not going willy nilly live.
Yeah, we're not streamers here. We're podcast recorders.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's the nuts and bolts of how we record and program. But in any case, yeah. So big news, and I guess initial thoughts. Let's start there.
I mean, it's something that has been talked about for a decade now, you know, in various ways, as an inevitability, obviously, because death comes for us all, and Vince is very old, and so there was sort of an idea that eventually he'll either go out, you know, on the job, or he'll, for health reasons, whatever, he'll be forced to step down. So everyone knew this day was coming to a certain extent, but Vince is, you know, such a showman and so pot committed to wrestling and his company and just the idea of being Vince McMahon at this point that, you know, even when this news started to break and the Wall Street Journal talks about it and there was the rumors over years started bubbling, harassed this woman, allegedly raped this person, like all these things started coming to light, some we'd heard before, some that were totally new. Then all of a sudden the drum beat started getting louder and louder, and then of course Vince goes on TV and says, "Aha! You can't get rid of me. Welcome to Smack." Whatever the hell those appearances were, which was, in, you know, fascinating. Not surprising because it's Vince, but still, like the fact that the leader of a billion-dollar company would do that is just it's kind of unbelievable. And that made me just think maybe this won't happen. Maybe he'll just weather this storm. And then, of course, several days ago, well, we get the news, and it seems permanent. I've seen rumblings that this might be some sort of weird ploy. I find that very hard to believe. It seems like the gears are turning. It seems like he did some real bad shit, and it seems like this is time for a new era to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think that everybody, you know, to your point earlier, like everybody has talked about this as a thing that could happen, and I never really believed that it could happen, just because whenever someone would say that, it was usually coming on the second half of the sentence, "Man, this creative's so bad, comma, I wonder when Vince is going to retire." But it's true, though. It's like I feel like it was always in the same breath as of that conversation. And so the fact that he's retiring for reasons that have nothing to do with like the creative elements of the show, it somehow feels like it's not the right way for this to have unfolded. But I mean, like, I think the facts, I mean, you know, we're still uncovering the layers of what the hell this guy has been doing with company funds and female talent and et cetera, that I won't speculate on, because we'll let the Wall Street Journal just tell us when we know all the facts, what the hell happened and what the, you know, what they've uncovered. But ultimately, you know, again, like I think the focus for fans and some fans and like myself, it goes to like, yeah, I mean, I just assumed he would just keep doing this until he died.
Yeah, I mean, it really seemed feasible at a certain point. Like I've seen some people, like you said, we're not going to get into the criminal elements, the unethical elements, just because we don't know yet. And when they come out, we'll all learn with everybody else. And if Vince committed crimes and is as bad a dude as it seems, I really hope he suffers to every extent that he should for the things he's done that are bad. But we're going to talk about his legacy here and what it means. And like you said, just his obstinance and his stubbornness and the fact that it seemed like he was never going anywhere. It's just wild that he isn't there anymore. It's just he's been there forever. Like he's been such a constant. And he's been, like I said, he's been this like he will just grab on kicking and screaming and refuse to leave his office, refuse to leave his desk, refuse to give up the book. Like just even seeing the news earlier today, Walt, the Triple H is taking over creative, it's like that was always the thing we talked about, is, well, surely he's grooming Triple H he's setting Triple H up to be the new head of the company when he's long gone. But then Triple H literally gets sick, has a heart attack and then leaves basically and is gone for a while, and now all of a sudden is back. Like that part feels like a dream. It feels fake because you're just like, how it seemed like it was going to happen, and then it seemed like it was never going to happen, and it was full steam ahead with Vince, and now all of a sudden Stephanie's in charge, H is in charge of creative. Like everything came to light they were waiting on. But like you said, the way we got here is topsy-turvy and wild, and I hope someday it's all sorted out, because I would love to see how we got from A to B to C to D, because it's wild.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I fixate on too. Is like this feels like a new and novel and different result, but it was so assumed for the last 10 years up until like NXT 2.0 that this is how it would go, with maybe a few other people also still involved. Like, was there a world where Kevin Dunn would also still have a position in the post Vince era? Is there a world where, Laurinaitis was still involved? Like, maybe, but I mean, obviously, now what we know now is it seems like they're also on the way out too. But yeah, I think the perception of like, oh man, like this is the end result. This is crazy, when really, like, it's not crazy, because
it's what was preordained, years ago. It's the way all the pieces were seemingly falling into place.
Yeah, but I think with the NXT 2.0 and the H demotion there, I mean, I don't even know if it was considered a demotion. Like, I don't know corporately what you would call it, but like it just seemed like he was out of favor for NXT because of the quote unquote like Wednesday wars or whatever. Like. As if whatever, like whatever you want to call that. But ultimately, that seemed like, oh shit, we're going in a different direction, and to wind up back where we started feels weirder than going in a different direction in the first place.
Yeah, it's not like H was removed from NXT leadership because they were like, okay, time to sort of brace yourself for becoming head of, like you said, everybody across the board at least viewed it as trouble. Like H is, like he's at best out of favor, at worst out entirely. Like that seemed like it was an option for a while there. Like no one really knew when he was coming back, and no one knew how he was perceived, and like they kept pretty tight lips on all that. So to have that be the precursor to H now literally in charge, I'm very intrigued to see from a creative perspective how much things now move with H nominally in charge. Like, because I think that will go a long way towards determining what all this is now. Like, is this truly a change of the guard? Is Vince truly gone? Like, he's not, in the sense that I believe he still owns the majority voting shares. Like, he's still the owner. It's not like he's been taking his, it's not like they stripped him of his ownership of the company, but he's stepped down in the many roles. So is there some shadow situation, like, or is there even just, is H going to want to upset the, what's been going on for the last 6 months, a year, which is, as you sort of hinted at, sort of boring, basic booking, I would say. Nothing crazy, no harsh U-turns, no shifts, just like really pretty standard stuff. Very generic WWE fare as we know it. So like, is there? What do you think? Do you think he's like? If you had to guess, do you expect anything to actually change the next few months, or do you suspect we can just watch some, typically meh WWE wrestling for a little while longer?
It's tough to really. It's not tough to predict how the next couple months are going to go because like he's taking over a very problematic situation. You know, it seems like SummerSlam, which was already a mess to begin with, is now even more question mark, especially in the main event scene. But also, too, in the next couple of months, you're not getting back the key people who've been injured that have made Raw unwatchable, more unwatchable than it already has been in the last several years. And also, like, there's no developmental. There's no one to bring up. Who are you going to bring up tomorrow to help offset the lack of talent from injury or just from people leaving or from people who don't want to be there? Like, so I mean, maybe the idea is maybe you just coast on some very straightforward, basic booking, and just see what you have in 2 months and what that could possibly. Then you get the Survivor Series, and maybe you start playing around with the chess pieces. But right now, that like half the board is gone. You're playing a game of chess, and you're already in check. It's like what? Shit. Like I'm taking over this game right now. Like I'm already at a huge deficit. So so again, short term booking, you just get through it.
Yep. Yeah, if you look at the SummerSlam card, like it's I admittedly don't watch week to week. I read, I watch clips, I sort of observe at a distance. But when you look at the card right now, like Lashley, I like Lashley. Theory, they're pushing to the moon for better or worse. Pat McAfee and Baron Corbin have a high-profile match. Riddle and Seth Rollins, like, do people like Riddle? Like, I can't really tell. Obviously, he's not bottoming out, but like, is he? I don't get the sense he's becoming a main event star.
You know what? You'd like Riddle a lot more if he was pushed like a main event talent instead of just like treated like everybody else.
I guess. I mean, he's facing Seth Rollins. Like, I suppose that's a high-profile match, right? I don't know. Is Seth even a big deal anymore, or is he just like he's a stalwart? He's there every night, so I give him credit for that. But
I feel like at this point, Seth is kind of just the guy they use to help push new faces.
Yeah, I mean it's SummerSlam, and they got Roman, who's become a part-time champion. They got Lesnar, who's the definition of part-timer. They have McAfee, who's a attraction. They have Logan Paul, who's I guess full-time now, but also still basically an attraction. Like this definitely feels like Mania Light. Like it's Mania Light both in terms of match quality and in terms of just the quote unquote star power that is here, where it's like yeah, these guys are names, and like I guess it's important that they're fighting at SummerSlam, but it sort of feels like they're just like here you go, like very lackluster, very sort of rudimentary. Here's the guys, they're having a match, like so it does feel like a very inopportune time for change, but I think it sort of touches on where Vince's legacy is right now, in 2022. Like, again, the most influential promoter of all time, maybe the most influential figure in all of wrestling. That's, debatable, but probably the case. But then, he leaves a company that is just, I don't think is built on creative anymore. I don't think it's built on shocking the fans, exciting the fans, engaging with the fans. Like, and I don't even mean in like a Daniel Bryan doesn't win the Rumble, so we all get pissy way. I just mean in like I just feel like they can put these cards out there, they can put these big matches out there, quote unquote big matches out there, and I just think it doesn't really matter because they have the Saudi money, they have the Peacock money, they have the Raw and SmackDown money. Like, they have to put on a decent show. Like, I don't think they're putting on a bad show. I don't think they're lazy. I think the performers are certainly trying, but I just don't know if there's this push anymore to reinvent the wheel, to do something unique, to draw eyeballs like crazy, to take a big swing and potentially miss. I just don't think big swings are in their current business strategy anymore. I think it's more just like singles and doubles, move the chains, keep things, mix my sports metaphors there, but keep things humming along, because the money's coming whether it's whether you want it to or not, and they certainly want it to, but like there's just no need to go crazy.
Yeah, I think I think that it's hard to debate that, because that's kind of just been the case for the last few years. It's like, why build a star and spend the time and allocate the creative equity in everybody's brain power to like think of ways to let people shine into like week to week. I don't know. Like I guess it is easier just to pay Lesnar the money and Goldberg the money, and there you go. People are going to care, and why did I have to spend time worrying about it? Just have them running around for the stadium for the 24/7 championship, because that's just easier, you know?
Yeah.
And if no one cares, then like whatever, like that's fine too, I guess. But I mean, you know, you look at Triple H's track record for booking, and I wouldn't. You look at the old NXT, like there were really like huge pivots. Like it wasn't like Vince Russo booking where you're trying to hit a grand slam with every crazy creative decision, knowing that you're going to fail every time, especially if you don't have home run hitters. Sorry for the baseball metaphors, but like Triple H is not someone who relies on big swings either. I mean, like a lot of his booking in NXT was pretty organic, and there's long-term storytelling, and you know, it wasn't flashy. It was pretty simple actually and straightforward. And so if we could just, you know, I guess my question back would be, I mean, what's the balance, right? Because you know, I can't disagree that they're making so much money now despite their creative selves, but like also can we tell a story that makes sense and build someone we're building to something, versus just like doing these like break glass in case of emergency like booking decisions with like overpriced talent. Like I don't know what is the balance. I would hope there is one, and I would hope Triple H could find that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a very good point about H's creative control over NXT and sort of like, you know, how it contrasts to Vince. And I think that you're totally right. H was organic, especially in the sense that, you know, when there was a hot women's feud, that would become the main event. When there was a Gargano Ciampa blood feud, like whether it was for the title or not, that was the main event. When there was a great tag team scene, when it was American Alpha, the Revival, Gargano DIY, like then those became the main event, you know? Like, and then there was always War Games. Like they just, I feel like one thing NXT did really well in that period was it allowed the biggest thing to be the biggest thing, and they nurtured it, and they built it, and they added to it, and they made it feel special. They didn't, you know, like you said, they certainly didn't hot shot, you know, main roster guys down there just to get some juice. They didn't quote unquote bury some of those feuds that were red hot because they didn't fit with because, you know, the plan said it was supposed to be X versus Y, so we got to make this feud, you know, just sort of die down a little bit because we really should be focusing on this. Like they seem to recognize what was happening and fuel it and make it better. And that to me, I guess, is the hope. Like that's just not something Vince really seemed to care about. Like, you know, like I said, whether we all were so mad at him because he didn't get behind Damien Mizdow or stuff like that, which personally I love Mizdow. Like I think that was really fun, but like I don't think Vince should have obviously chucked his plans every time we all started cheering for some random guy or girl, but it would, and you know, occasionally he did great things with Becky, with Kofi, like they ran with stuff here and there. But I like to imagine that now that Vince is gone, that's something H might bubble to the surface a little more. Like, you know, like if you don't have a great match for a random pay-per-view, let the Usos and like build a tag team feud that matters. You know, build a IC title, US title, like just make these things matter. Like things, you know, it's not, you can't make these feuds popular, you can't just force them upon us and expect us to like them, but you can ease us into it and give us matches that aren't world title matches and make them feel special, and like we will respond to that accordingly and start believing that maybe these can be main events, that these are things worth watching. You know, like that seems like something that H is pretty good at, is allowing those things to sort of get legs on their own and become something special.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the counterpoint to all this too, with regards to like, you know, booking philosophies for main roster versus developmental, quote unquote. Oh, you know, now it's developmental. Before it was actually a second brand or a third brand, but you know, whatever, however you want to call it. We'll just call it NXT, I guess. Yes. You know, I think there was something to be said about like, hey, I have this guy. We're building him up. to then transition to the main roster. So I have him or her for like 10 to 12 months. So what are the hottest feuds and hot shot those? And, it's organic, but also it's like Nakamura's only in NXT for a year. So let's put the title on him at some point pretty soon. And then he'll pass the baton. It's like the main roster, there is no next level. It's like you're there. And like there's a main event scene, there's a 24/7 title scene and everything in between. But like you kind of have to come at it differently too with regards to like, I have this guy for the next 10 years potentially. So how do I make what he's doing relevant and interesting all the time? And that could be tough, a lot tougher, and that could be different. And that's why you see some really silly things on the main roster, because you just have people who they're not fighting the title tomorrow, but you have them and they're not going anywhere, and you got to do something with them. So here it is. But again, you hope that those ideas, maybe they're not silly or forgettable. Maybe they're interesting blood feuds, or maybe we're coming at those situations differently where I give a shit about the mid-carders, because while they're not fighting for the title, sometimes a better story is more important.
Yeah, and what you're describing too is it's not like AEW has figured that out. Like what AEW gets shit for these days is they put on 5-hour pay-per-views with 11 matches, and they try and stuff as many of their guys on there and girls on there as they can, and most of the matches are extremely well wrestled and entertaining, but there's just too many of them, and there's not a lot of there's no angles there. Like it becomes wrestling for the sake of wrestling, and there's a time and a place for that, but it's not better necessarily. It's different, and it's nice to have it, and I appreciate the effort almost always, but it's not like they've cracked the code exactly, So, and I think one of the things Vince's legacies he's leaving behind here is just too much wrestling, Like, it's this sort of a catch-22. Like, they have really deep rosters, so there should be a Dynamite and a Rampage. There should be a Raw and a SmackDown. Like, I get why maybe they don't need to be 5 hours of Raw and SmackDown. Maybe there can be 3 or 4, but regardless, I get why they have 2 shows, and usually they have enough talent to put on 2 televised shows a week. But it's just so much. Like, there's only so much you can do. Like, the grind is endless. Like, there's no time off. There's no break. There's no vacation for creative or for the wrestlers. So you just get the same stuff warmed over and over again. Like, to a certain extent, I've always understood that, because it's just so hard to have new ideas, Like, it's just there's no time to really step back and think. Like, a lot of times just go, next show. So I think that's one thing, it comes with the territory. Vince has just took over, and especially as, TV has sort of flattened, and everything is sort of equal, and there's not many eyeballs. Like, Vince became one of the biggest games in town over the last 5 years by accident, Like, it's not like Raw and SmackDown got better. It stayed where it was, or just fell a little less. And so all of a sudden, now they're one of the few things left that gets eyeballs, gets viewers. So I think that's, to me, the double-edged sword of Vince's legacy is too much entertainment, too boring, too long, but extremely successful at it, almost by default.
Yeah, and my mind, when we talk about that, like, well, they're still making so much money, and the ratings are still higher than anything else on cable. It's like, okay, yeah, that's very true. Those are objective numbers. And I guess the only counterpoint I would make, and I always think back to the pipe bomb promo, is like, is Vince making millions when he could be making billions? Is he making billions when he could be making twice as much? And, a lot of that stems from the creative IP that is showcased on his 5, sometimes 8 hours of television every week. And, has he done the best job to fully maximize and monetize his stars? Like, I mean, yeah, they're getting these insane TV deals, and that's great. And I don't necessarily foresee them not making a lot of money on TV rights deals, or the Peacock streaming deal and yada yada, distribution of this exclusive content. But like, when you look at Raw ratings and it's still higher than everything else, but relative to itself, it's so much lower. You know, I don't know. At what point is it like, is that going to work against them in a negotiation? Or if you look at SummerSlam's streaming numbers in this month, and they're like, or not good, or they're downsizing from what they wanted to do, which was like a big ass stadium, to like an indoor arena. How's that going to look? And is that going to affect them in their ability to negotiate more money? Like, I don't know, but I guess we'll find out in a few years. And the only way to really test that now is to, I guess, see if we can improve ratings based on better creative. And maybe that produces more money. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm really intrigued to see. Like, obviously, I would love if the shows were good. I think you and I mean, we wouldn't. I don't think either one of us. We have better things to do than watch 5 hours of wrestling a week, on top of the like hours that we maybe tune into. But like, I don't want Raw to be that good. And I can't imagine a world where it's that good where we want to watch all 3 hours. That's
true.
It's horrifying. But I would love for them to make good television again. I would like for them to figure something out, and I don't know how they do that or what they're gonna do. But I would love for it to right now, like my how I am with Dynamite is when something good is going to happen, I will make a case to watch a little bit of Dynamite, like at the very least catch up the next day. Like I'm intrigued enough, and they have a good enough quality show that I am willing to give them a chunk of my hard-earned time to see how it goes. Like, would never consider that with Raw and SmackDown. Like, sometimes I'll go back way after the fact and watch something just because I hear it was good, but I never go into it assuming, ooh, Monday night, like I should keep my ears to the ground and see if Raw is going to be good. Like, not even an option. So maybe that's a world that they're looking for. Like, I hope that the fire is there. Like, obviously, I'm sure H is excited to take charge. Like, I'm sure he has a million ideas. And, like, if he really does get free reign to sort of be himself, I think we'll be able to tell soon enough that that's the case, And I want to believe that they want, like, certain people must want to make new stars, Like, Roman is the biggest star of the last, decade they've made. And, like, as much as I enjoy Roman, like, he's not Cena, he's not Brock, he's not... he's not Batista. He's not any of those guys. Like, he's in that next tier underneath. I think that's he's very good at what he does, most of it, but I think he's of an era where there's just not an emphasis on making him more than that. Like, it's been, I don't want to say he's been stagnant, but I think his success is sort of capped. Even if he goes to Hollywood and makes movies, which I don't really think he's going to be that good at, but even if he does, like, I just don't think he's coming at it with the same head of steam that Dave was, and certainly Cena was, and Brock was when he left a couple times. Like, Roman just seems like the biggest wrestler of now by default, again, as opposed to he has earned it because he's been this larger than life character we all appreciate and respect and enjoy. Like, he's earned it in terms of his performance in the ring. I just don't think he has that cachet with everybody, and I think that's just a byproduct of how Vince has been doing business for a while now.
Yeah, and I think too that like when we talk about stars in wrestling, it's like, who's Roman's like foil or counterpart? I mean, it's Lesnar, for better or for worse, and
who's like 45 years old and has been around forever.
But also, yeah, he's not around at all. So it's like,
yeah, he's around and he's not around at the same time.
And it seems like Roman is kind of like half in, half out, where he would, maybe we're wrapping this thing up pretty soon. It's like, so who's he passing the baton to?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know who that person is right now, but I guess my question to you with regards to the future, the short-term future, the Vince, talking about passing batons, the Vince McMahon era being passed on to the Triple H era, like by Survivor Series, and things are turning around, are you interested again? Do you feel excited about like where the company could go by like Royal Rumble season?
I want to say yes, certainly. Like, I think that always was technically a possibility, even when Vince was in charge. That something would happen that would, in theory, get me intrigued. But turning that one sort of back to you, what do you think they could even do? You know, like what is there? Like who's out there? Who's like you said, who's ready to make that leap? Like what like what do they bring Bray back? Like I don't think that really matters. Like they call on a part timer, even Cena. Like I don't, you and I don't care about that. You know, like there's no one really lurking in the wings where I say like, well, if they sign that guy or if they do this, like you know, there's no like I know some of the best angles come out of nowhere, but like I don't see any like invasion type angle or any sort of like anything that would make them stand out. Like I suppose there's always room for total curveballs, but I struggle in you know with my limited knowledge, certainly of a non-weekly product watcher. I struggle to think about what they could even do that would cause me to show a ton of enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, again, like, 8 hours a week, upwards of 8 hours and more a week is just too much. It's like so much content. I mean,
It really is.
I don't, I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to um, downplay that because that is really important. And,
Because even when WCW was, you know, doing super long nitros, and then, but all like just thinking of that as an era where like the NWO was running real hot. Obviously, this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, so it's a very sort of different world. But like, they just most of those nitros were filler bullshit, you know. And then once or twice there'd be an angle that really mattered. Like it's that's how wrestling has always been, even at its most successful. Is there's one or two things a night, hopefully, that are truly exciting, and then the rest of it's just guys out there just fucking around and having matches and girls, and then you look back years later and you go, wow, that was wild. How like you know, usually it's a transcendent star or two or a transcendent angle. Like I wonder who is, like you sort of said, who is the star, who is the angle that's going to make this into must-see TV.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess ultimately I'm a little bit more excited the prospect of Triple H having all of the chess pieces now in front of him and seeing what he can do. I mean, like just to take what was 30 minutes of conversation and wrap it up. I'm excited to see what he could do because like, he had a lot of stars in NXT, but again, like with the understanding that they were going to disappear at some point. Now it's like you literally have all the resources and the backing of the biggest wrestling company in the universe to do what you want. And, I know they're not going to throw a lot of money at people because it goes against their corporate strategies, but inefficiencies. But, maybe they do entice some AEW talent to come back. Or not even come back, like to just come in the first place. Some AEW homegrown stars. And then suddenly now you have more to play with. And like, I guess my point is I kind of just trust Paul Levesque to be able to deliver us something more palatable and watchable and more interesting than Vince at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's there have been the most exciting moment of the last 7 months for sure is Cody coming back, and that's something we haven't seen in WWE for so long. Like since what, maybe the Hardys coming back. Like there's just when you're a monolith, when you're the only game in town, it's very hard to get those sort. Like I guess Edge coming back too from injury. So like returns are a huge part of. Huge moment maker, huge exciting, turn the dial, got to see this, got to know about this. Like, just, I'm not saying they need to just scoop guys up and bring them back for the sake of bringing them back, but the competition could invigorate them both in terms of getting them off their asses, as, they probably should be doing, and also just giving them more, like you said, more pieces to work with, more surprises. Like we love surprises. Like surprises could be what they really need. Like it's just they have the resources. They have more resources than anybody. Like Tony Khan loves to, I know his family has lots of resources, but the AEW seems pretty tapped out in terms of person power and TV time and all that. Like WWE has that shit to spare, and it obviously I'd love to see some organic homegrown stuff and H putting people where they need to be, letting them blossom, letting them thrive. But if they recognize the value in signing up some people and fresh blood and excitement and different things, like that could be really great as well. Like that's the kind of thing that probably would get me to watch. Like obviously an organic angle is gonna slowly build my enthusiasm, but get me talking, make me like hunt them down, make me get excited to watch a clip of an episode, maybe a full episode, God forbid. You know, like that would be progress if by the end of the year, like, I care again. Like, I think if they could get you and I to give a shit again, that's a pretty good sign, because we're in that we're hot in that middle of that demo, and we want to. Like,
and we do
wrestling.
not give a shit.
Yeah, and we do not care right now, but the capacity for us caring is there, you know? We literally host... I like to say to people, like, if they say, do you like wrestling? I go, no. And they go, well, you host a wrestling podcast. And I go, well, yeah, but I don't like wrestling.
I don't care enough to watch this crap.
But I love to talk about it with my friend for an hour every 2 weeks. But if, you know, I think you and I would like to care if they made the effort.
Yeah, I want to care about this thing I've been watching all my goddamn life. But,
yeah, and we talk about and we obsess over to a certain extent. Like, yeah, it'd be nice to give a shit.
But it needs to be really damn good for me to, like, give up watching other things and doing other things in my life, and, you know, not dedicate time to my professional career and my personal life. Yeah, it needs to be pretty damn good. It can't just be some bullshit.
And that's the main takeaway right now, right? Like, as the dust is sort of settling on Vince leaving, is like there's an opportunity here that they haven't had in a really long time to do something different. Like, perception and reality intertwined, in that we knew when Vince was in charge, we were mostly going to get same old, you know, again, minus a few bright spots here and there. But I think there's optimism that things might be a little different, like that these performers will get a chance to really shine. And I hope that's the post-Vince legacy. You know, like I don't expect the switch to flip. I don't expect, you know, the whole ground beneath us to shift, but I think maybe there's room for stuff to change and for people with talent to show off that talent the way they should be. And I think that would be a really good step. Like you said, if we can get a hint of that in the next couple of months, I think we can maybe start getting a little bit excited about the future of, like, mainstream wrestling.
Yeah, there's a precedent here that the guy in charge now does have vision and can tell stories. And that's all we really want at the end of the day. It's just good wrestling, good storytelling, good character development, just like any TV show.
Yep.
Well, except for the wrestling part. That's not usually not in TV shows.
Right. That part is unique, but the other stuff is what we're looking for. Well, we'll wait and see, but it certainly seems like a brave new world. It seems like a Vinceless world to a certain extent, and as the pieces sort of fall into place, maybe we'll come back and do another impromptu bonus app, Walt, and talk about the present day product, the present day entertainment going on. But for the most part, we're going to keep living in the past, or at least in the very recent past, talking about docs, talking about books, talking about all the good stuff that makes Awesome Truth great. So if you want more Awesome Truth, if you want to hear about all these episodes we put out there, books, documentaries, all things we cover, you can find our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. Please subscribe to us everywhere podcasts are delivered, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and we'll be bringing you those new episodes every other week, every other Wednesday. And if you want to follow us on social media and get more information, find out when the episodes are coming out, see some fun chatter, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at awesometruthpod. Walt, great to talk Vince with you. I guess we'll see what happens next. Raw is literally on in 2 hours. Are you going to be popping on Raw tonight?
I'll just wait for the highlights.
Your brother will text us if something good happens. So.
Yeah, I think so. I'm in enough smart wrestling text threads to someone will alert me.
Yeah, that's right. No one should be watching Raw just yet, but maybe there'll be a reason in the future, so we'll find out. For now, thank you so much for listening, and remember, the truth will set you free.